Well, good morning, everyone. Thanks so much for being here today. This is our second day of Iowa Ideas in our ninth year. So we are excited to have you all here. I'm Vanessa Miller. I am the higher education reporter for the Gazette. I've been doing that since 2013, so for quite a while. I just want to thank you for tuning in to this morning's session on 3-year degrees and dual enrollment, and we're going to be chatting about all the different sort of degree pathways that exist out there these days. I want to start by also thanking our presenting sponsor ITC Midwest. And I wanted to let everyone know that if you have any questions throughout the session, you can go ahead and throw that in the Q&A chat box or the Zoom chat, however you're watching it, and the moderator will shoot that over to me so that I can ask that of our panelists in real time. Feel free to ask questions as they come to you. I wanted to start today by just asking our panelists to sort of introduce themselves and say a little bit about, their role in education in the state.
Great. Well, I can go first if that works. My name's Amy Giske. So I serve as Bureau Chief for Community Colleges at the Iowa Department of Education. And I'm also serving as Interim Bureau Chief for Career and Technical Education. So I've been at the department about 5 years, but I've worked in higher ed my entire professional career. I grew up in Iowa, went to the University of Northern Iowa and studied sociology, but ended up out east for a while. So I worked in the UMaine system for about 13 years. Always in the area of non-traditional student access, affordability. So a lot of my focus has been on expanding, pathways to education for all students. But after spending some time out east, I wanted to return home. So I took a role as Dean of Continuing Graduate Programs at Simpson College for about 4 years prior to coming to the department. So I was excited to get back into public service when I made my way back to the department and have been here about 5 years. I've enjoyed every minute. So I do a lot of work with the community colleges, but we oversee concurrent enrollment, so that dual enrollment of high school students in college and high school courses, and then just work closely with community colleges on all of their academic programs. So very good to be here.
Great, thanks. And I'm Emily Shields. I run the statewide association for Iowa's 15 community colleges. So we are a nonprofit organization advocating for community college students and the programs and people that serve them. My career is also really similar to Amy, tied to educational access and that really being a priority. I've worked in education policy and in higher education community engagement and a few other things. And we're very united in our belief that education can be a game changer for people.
Awesome. Yeah. Well, thank you guys. You're going to have some great expertise, obviously, for this, given all of your background. I wonder if we could start the conversation by just taking kind of a high level view of the higher education landscape in Iowa or regionally right now, and what sort of the degree pathways look like, what exists currently, and like what is sort of, if there is like a way that majority people kind of attract, majority people follow or traditionally follow, or whether that's changing, what if that looks different than it did a decade ago.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to start. I think it absolutely does look a lot different. Some of the big things that come to mind to me for Iowa specifically is in the last decade, the just explosion of concurrent enrollment in high school. We have one of the highest rates in the country and a really successful partnership between K-12s and community colleges to provide that. So we're a state where a lot of high school students are getting that exposure to college and getting a lot of credits taken care of that can help them complete faster, save money, that kind of thing. So that's been a really big change. The other one that comes to mind for me is the growth of short-term non-credit programming, where people are getting credentials or certificates or that kind of thing. That has grown so much in the last decade, and that's really very workforce focused now and can be something you do instead of a degree or in addition to a degree, or later in your career as you're trying to change careers and get new skills. And that's something where we're really excited that just this year, the federal government approved Pell to apply to those short-term workforce programs. And we're looking forward to the rules on that being released so we can start supporting that here in Iowa.
Yeah, those are major themes I would point to as well. I think with the increased attention on affordability and getting people into the workforce more quickly, we're seeing more and more alternative pathways developed. How do we get students through more quickly so that they're spending less money and then losing less years that they could be working? So I think that contributes to the growth in concurrent, contributes to more people wanting shorter credentials, shorter stackable credentials, so that if they have to stop out for whatever reason, life happens, or they want to work and they can't go to school any longer, they have a marketable credential on their transcript, and they just want to get out more quickly. So we're seeing, I would say, more alternative, less traditional pathways as the years go on, both because consumers want it and because kind of the market demands it.
Yeah. That's interesting because I was wondering like about the why, whether it is, that students do just want to get into the workforce faster, or if they are trying to save money, or if they want to get a graduate degree. Like, is it all of the above, or is one of them predominant?
I think it is a little bit of all of the above. And there's more types of students. I feel like as we make education more accessible to more types of students, you have to be more flexible in your modalities. So if we rely only on high school students pursuing traditional pathways, we won't have the workers that we need. We need to reach out to adult workers who need to have some credit, no degree, and want to come back. And as you do that, the traditional model just does not work for those people. And they have different value propositions. They may not want the traditional on-campus experience. They've got families, communities where they get a lot of those needs met. So they really are just interested in getting the credential and getting back out there. So some of it is sort of the face of the student demographic changing a bit as well.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And maybe you guys can remind me, but I remember like 5 years ago or so, Governor Reynolds set a goal of getting like 70% of Iowans some form of post-secondary education, where because the workforce would demand it. Like, where do we stand with that? Do you know?
I think it depends how you count things. And that's been one of the really interesting conversations in recent years, is a recognition that I think we used to think if you just had some college but not a degree or a credential, that had no value. But we are having students leave programs when they have the skills that the employer is looking for. And so one of the metrics that I think the administration kind of added to the calculation was if you got some college and it resulted in different employment opportunities and higher wages, then that does have some value. And I think when you take all of that into account, we're pretty close. Now, when it comes to traditional credentials, I think we still have a little ways to go. And I don't know if Amy, if you have that stat at your fingertips, but we do have some room to continue to grow in the number of people who have credentials that the workforce is looking for.
Yeah, well, and maybe you can talk about it from the workforce perspective, in terms of like shortages and what the need is there, because you mentioned that, Amy, about why it's valuable to get students into the workforce faster. What is the layout for Iowa right now?
Yeah, there are certain industries that are very much in demand, like the allied health fields, nursing, certainly anything in healthcare, advanced manufacturing. Those are the two industries I'd say we hear the most about in terms of high need. Transportation and logistics. Any other industries that jump to your mind, Emily?
I mean, teaching is still an area where
Yes.
there is a lot of struggle to find enough candidates for those jobs, and we're working on creative solutions to that. I think there are a lot of different industries still looking for folks, not necessarily that we don't have enough people, but it's the skills gap, the people with the right skills for the positions that are open in the state. And there is absolutely still a gap there.
Right. And and I wanted to jump quick back because when you were talking about concurrent enrollment, quickly. So that, I mean, today it is nearly like 50% of community college enrollment. Am I
That's
right?
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, that like a decade ago, it was, what do you know what the stat was? Like,
Yeah, that's a good question. When it first started, it was probably closer to 30. Like it's been just on an increased trajectory, and it's closer to 50% headcount, a little bit less than that in terms of contact hours. But yeah, some colleges, more than 50% of their headcount, so individual students, are high school students.
And that translates to more than half of our high school students are taking college classes. And that's the stat that really puts us far ahead of most other states in the country.
Right. Because I was wondering, when you're like, say you're a high school student, what is like the majority of that look like for high school students? Are they all getting associate's degrees before they graduate? Or is it mostly like they're getting some credit or taking one or two classes? Or like what's the norm there?
Yeah, associate degrees are not the norm.
What?
Yeah, I was going to say associate degrees are less the norm.
Yes, not quite that much, but at least some. And there's such a wide variety. I think that's the other change. Probably when a lot of people think about this, they're thinking about, oh, that's just helping the student who's going to go to a 4-year college. But we have more and more high school students getting their certified nurse aide while they're in high school, for example, that kind of thing, doing those career and technical fields where you can get such a head start in high school and be much closer to being into the workforce sooner. So I think that's been another big area of growth, is really in those career and technical fields.
Right. And for those students, it doesn't cost anything, right?
That's right.
Yeah. Who does pay that cost? Is it the districts or the state?
Yeah, the concurrent enrollment model in Iowa is that it's free for students and families, which is amazing. It's not that case in all states, and that it's unlimited access. So some have free, courses, but they limit how much a student can take or what type of courses. Right now, we really have a wide access model, and it's 9th through 12th. We don't limit it by grade. So the state of Iowa, so taxpayers help pay for this program for the state. The money flows, community colleges will charge the district, and then the state reimburses the district for a portion of that.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, it also is, is it true that students sometimes try out something they thought they wanted to get into, and so they can sort of learn quickly that isn't the path they actually want to take, instead of doing that in college or whatever?
Yeah, it is. And I think that's of great value, right, to families. I know I changed majors a few times. Most people do. That can be one of the reasons that it takes 4 years or even longer. I think we're seeing that time to degree shorten in the state. I know University of Northern Iowa in particular is having more and more students able to finish in 3 years, because they've kind of either gotten a jump start on what they know they want to do, or gotten a little bit of that process of figuring out what they don't want to do out of the way.
Right. Yeah. And so maybe we can talk a little bit about 3-year degrees. So what UNI has is not an official 3-year degree. Is that right? But just
That's
kids
right.
are finishing on faster.
It's still relatively new that 3-year degrees, or really, Amy, I think as you put it more succinctly, 90 credit hour degrees, because it's really about those credit hours, not how many years it takes you to do them. That is very newly being approved by our national accreditors. And that is where anyone who does it can do it in those 90 hours. It is a shorter hour degree program. We don't have any of those currently in the state, but I think some are being considered. What is happening, though, is that more students are getting credit hours taken care of in high school, and so they can graduate within 3 years. And that is a significant, either way, is a significant benefit financially to families.
For sure. Yeah. Because I know that the Board of Regents had been sort of investigating the option of offering 3-year degrees on its campuses. Can you guys talk about the pros and cons of doing that in terms of cost savings? And I'm talking about pros and cons for both students and the institutions and the state in terms of its economy and workforce.
For the actual 90-hour degrees?
Yeah, like if we are going to have these offered at some point, the 3 years. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it's an interesting time for this conversation. As you know, we just released a report yesterday about community colleges potentially offering bachelor's degrees. Obviously, the 3-year degree concept applies to those bachelor's degrees specifically. Community colleges right now offer 2-year degrees, and that is the extent of how far we can go. The legislature, I believe, next session will be considering whether to allow bachelor's degrees, which then could include this shorter 90-hour degree program. And I think anytime you talk about shortening an education path, there are pros and cons. We do need people in the workforce faster, and people who are going back to school as working adults, that kind of thing, certainly want the most efficient path. And I think there's value in that. What usually gets left behind is some of those general education classes. And what we risk there is just that those are where you're getting some of those soft skills, right? That employers say they're looking for. That's where you're learning about context and history and communication and, psychology and things that maybe aren't specific to your degree, but are about how you interact with people and are able to navigate situations. So I think that is the biggest concern with anything that shortens the pathway, is that you're obviously losing something. And the fear is that it will be those less skill specific things, but still really critical to success. So I think it's about figuring out, how do we ensure students come out with a really well-rounded ability to be successful in the workforce?
I would agree. I think you might also just lose some of that exploration time, which if you're a student who is looking for that or is looking for more traditional experience, like you want to take a semester and study abroad, you want a double major, then a traditional pathway might be a better fit for you. This is why you need multiple pathways for multiple audiences. So maybe 3-year degree is not the best fit for someone who didn't have time to explore in high school and they really want to try out a few different majors and just learn about themselves. I feel like my first year of college, I was just learning a lot, being exposed to a lot, and just figuring out what I was passionate about. But I did not have concurrent enrollment in high school. I didn't get to do much exploration. I didn't know what my opportunities were as much in high school as maybe our students do today. Yeah. So I don't think it's lots of options for lots of types of students is where we're going. And I think it's where we need to go, because one pathway doesn't work for everyone. So I would not say like the 3-year pathway is the better pathway for all students in all scenarios, but definitely it has pros for certainly the state, certainly for students who are more aware of what pathway they want and want a quick pathway out and need less of that time for exploration. So I think it's a good tool to add to the toolkit.
Yeah. And I think for community colleges, when, a lot of who we're serving is that adult learner who has built that skill base in other ways through other experiences, and now is just looking for the credential they need for the job they've already decided they want and the job they already know is available in their community. And we definitely want to provide more pathways for that person.
I'm so sorry, I was muted. I said absolutely. Yeah, what we were talking about, just to be clear, our 3-year degree is that start from zero. Like you don't come in with anything, it's still possible to get a degree in 3 years.
That's right.
Yeah. And you had mentioned, Emily, that the community colleges, so maybe you can talk a little bit about that. They were directed by the legislature in the last session to investigate offering 4-year bachelor's degrees. Can you talk a little bit about like why they wanted you to look into that and what you guys found in your
I'd love to. Yep. So the legislature asked us back in January to really study the idea of community colleges in Iowa offering bachelor's degrees. We've done a lot of research around how things work in the state, the needs, the gaps, but also what other states have learned, because 24 states now have community college bachelor degrees. There are, I think, over 700 community college bachelor degree programs being offered across the country. And some of those have been going on for over a decade. So we really have a lot of information about what they've resulted in. And those results are pretty compelling. When you look at states that have had these programs for a while, they're really serving the purpose of bringing people into the workforce in specific ways that they wouldn't otherwise. So taking a place-bound student who isn't going to move to go to a four-year college or university, wants to stay in their community, and is looking to complete their bachelor's degree for a specific opportunity in that community, this could really meet that need. So we spent a lot of time looking at those successes, which are very compelling, but also looking at Iowa's capacity and the feasibility for doing that here. And I think the good news is that Iowa's community colleges have a lot of demonstrated success, really talented faculty, and a lot of capabilities. There are some questions around capacity. It is very difficult in a lot of the career and technical fields specifically to find faculty. And so expanding that roster would be a challenge. And then I think in some cases there are space and equipment considerations and that kind of thing. So it is something that would require resources, at least at the startup. But in looking at that, if this is a path the legislature wants to go down to try to expand opportunity across our state, I think we could be really successful.
Right. And in doing the research, did you guys go into sort of those rural communities like you mentioned? And I mean, I'd be interested to hear, like, are students really sort of passing up a four-year degree because they don't want to leave their community, or
they are. I mean, one of the things that was most compelling to me, we did research. There's a lot of data in our initial report, especially, and that kind of thing. But sometimes it's hearing that one person's story that really helps you to see the opportunity. And I was in Muscatine with some students there several months ago talking about this. And all of the 6 students that we talked to aren't planning to get a bachelor's degree right now, but would if their local community college offered that. And it's not that they're super far from other four-year colleges and universities in that area. They're just very rooted in their community for a variety of reasons and not able or interested in leaving even to go 30 minutes. And they're also comfortable and feel safe at the community college with the people who are working with them there and how their needs have been met there. And so that's where I think there's so much potential. We're not looking to steal from colleges and universities with the populations they're recruiting now. I think they're doing that very successfully, but we're leaving a lot of talent on the table in our state with people who could get a bachelor's degree and don't have the right opportunity to do that right now.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like that's like news to the state's ears, honestly, just with the concern about, rural parts of the state losing population and wanting to have, more educators and nurses, doctors in those portions of the state. So, yeah, I'm sure that.
Yeah, and something that not everyone knows is that every one of our 15 community colleges serves a rural area. Even the ones that you would think of as being very urban, and certainly DMAC has an urban campus. DMAC also serves Boone and Newton and Carroll and places in the state where there is less educational opportunity otherwise. So when we say rural, we're really talking about our entire system.
Yeah. Right. And I mean, so doing this, though, would require, because community colleges are baked into Iowa code, right? So it would require some changes because now they can't do this, right?
That's right.
Code? Okay. And is it, because I understand the limitations are a little bit twofold, at least, like they aren't allowed to do anything more than an associate's, but aren't there limitations on tuition as well?
Yeah, so right now we the only differential tuition rate we can charge is in-state and out-of-state. Mm-hmm. And so to offer a bachelor's degree program successfully, we would need to be first authorized to do so, but then authorized to charge somewhat of a higher tuition rate for those upper level courses to make them work financially. We still think it would be more affordable than anywhere else in the state, but it would need to be a higher level of tuition than our lower level courses. So that's part of what we're looking at for legislative changes.
Yeah. And I guess I wanted to ask quick too. So the community colleges are considering now 4 years and have 2 years. Are they looking at 3-year degrees or not yet?
I mean, I think we're trying to not get the cart before the horse, right? This is a legislative conversation that will happen hopefully next session. And should we be authorized to offer bachelor's degrees, I think they would be looking at a wide range of options. And I think we'll know more by then about how accreditors are viewing these 3-year opportunities. That's really just being tested right now. And so I think that's something that we will take a close look at if this is something the legislature authorizes colleges to do.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm curious, like Amy, maybe you can talk to this a little bit about the what the advising looks like at the high school level right now. Like, are students being kind of educated on all their different pathways, and is that different than it looked like maybe a decade ago, where things were a bit more traditional, or what does it look like?
No, that's a really good question, because it's actually a focus, I would say, a policy focus of ours is how, because it's been so open for so long, it's an area of opportunity to help refine the pathways for students, especially in the concurrent enrollment space while they're taking courses, because you realize some benefits, but you realize more benefits if you can be more intentional in your course taking while in high school. So the state and the colleges have invested in a college and career transition counselor model. So I think you can imagine our counselors at the school districts are very overwhelmed with a number of priorities on their plate, including mental health, behavioral issues, scheduling. So the extent to which they can provide deep advising in a student's college and career plans is limited in certain areas. So this model creates a position that is sort of shared between the college and the district, where the staff member spends some time in the college, some time in the high school, and really solely focuses on that type of advising, FAFSA preparation, what the student wants to do, to just get them thinking about their college and career plans. So I think that dedicated advising support, we want to continue to grow that program because that model is working really well. Students need that dedicated time to focus and plan for their future, and they need help. And some students have that at home. Not all students have that at home. We need to make sure all students have that. And then we're trying to couple that with some policy around creating more pathways in concurrent enrollment. So it's not just take any old college course, because while there's some benefit, there is more benefit if you do some exploration in intentional planning around your pathway so that you can graduate in 3 years instead of, I take 30 credits and I still need 4 credits when I get out the other side, because in saving students time and money is a goal of the program. So there's some work to do to make sure that happens. But advising is critical. Anything in education, it's funny you talk about what's working. It always comes down to human beings, or very often human beings helping students through their pathways is just a critical aspect.
Yeah. It's so interesting. Actually, just you talking made me think of this, but I have twins who are in 6th grade, and both of their favorite class is this class that it's called Introduction to Avid, but it's just them getting to think about career paths. And
awesome.
I just think it's really interesting that they are wanting that, kids have that help. So, yeah. I wanted to jump quick back to that. So you talked a little bit about this when we were talking about the 4-year degrees, Emily, and you said we're not looking to steal students away from universities, but I know that is something, the competition piece of it is something people had talked about a little bit. So talk about how your investigation looked at sort of finding the gaps and what gaps maybe do exist.
Yeah, I mean, there is no doubt that in a variety of fields, we need more people with bachelor's degrees than we have now. So despite the amazing colleges and universities that we have across the state, they are not able to meet everyone's needs and not able to meet everyone where they are. And so that would be our interest. If you look at other states that have had this, their public universities have not seen a decline in enrollment. So I think that some of that fear we would find is not there. And part of that is because in doing this, community colleges would go through the process they do with every program they offer now. And that is a really robust local look at what the workforce needs in that area and whether those needs are currently being met. no community college is going to start a program if the needs are already being met, because who are their students going to be? So that's what we'd be looking at, is what does this local workforce economy need that it's not currently producing, and then offering that in very niche ways that meet the needs of specific kinds of learners whose needs aren't being met right now.
Right. And do you think this would affect the transfer numbers at all of students, who are getting associates at communities right now and then transfer to a university for a 4-year?
I mean, that really doesn't bear out in the other states. So that would not be my expectation. Again, if you're the kind of student who's going in saying, I'm going to get some credits taken care of at the community college, but then I really want to go have that university experience, you're still going to do that. I don't see that changing the minds of a lot of those students who are looking for that kind of an experience. But if you're someone saying, gosh, I'd really love to be a teacher, but I'm already working and I have kids and I'm not moving to transfer to get my degree, this is an opportunity for me to get that degree, take care of my family, and meet a big need in the community. And that goes for nursing, business, any number of things where we know we need more people with more skills than they have right now, and they're not finding those opportunities in what we're currently offering.
Okay, yeah. And you were talking about the other states. Like, what are some of the leaders in doing these 4-year degrees in terms of other states, and like how long have they been doing this?
Florida and Washington are the ones that we looked at most extensively, because they have been offering them to some degree for the last 10 years or so. They're also in a place where in Florida, for sure, every single one of their community colleges is now doing this to some degree. And I think Washington is either at that or close to that. So they have had a lot of experience and a wider experience with offering this and seeing what works and what doesn't. And there certainly are lessons from those states in both of those areas, what works and what doesn't. And so I think that's really helpful in terms of where Iowa is starting. Is we're not at the very beginning of this in terms of the country. So there's a lot we can do to ensure that we're not making some of those same mistakes, and that we're ensuring we're meeting needs in the best way possible, and serving students the way they really need to be served.
Yeah. Did Florida or Washington see any impact on their state universities?
No. And that's where we're really comfortable with moving forward, because they have not seen, some big decline in transfer or enrollment or any of those things. It really has just expanded the pie.
Okay, awesome. Well,
and I want to
go ahead, Amy.
Sorry. I was going to say, having advised this type of student for a long time in my previous lives, students that are more workforce oriented programs, more non-traditional students, usually what you're competing against is their decision to do nothing at all. You're not really competing against other institutions. They're either going to do nothing or they'll do a program like this. So I really think more than anything than taking them away from another program is you're creating a new option that allows them to do something where otherwise they just won't go on. That's right. So that's kind of why I'm excited about the prospect of these programs, because I just think it would create opportunity for students who will otherwise not get their bachelor's at all.
Right. Yeah. Because you're saying do nothing is in terms of getting no education.
In terms of education, yes. They'll continue to work because they have so many demands on their time. It's so easy to just be like, I can't fit that in. I've got, family, community, work. It just needs to be very accessible to them, or they will not go on to college at all.
Mm-hmm. Right. And you did find, I wonder, Emily, in doing that research, that they're, because obviously they're jumping into the workforce if they're not getting a degree, but you find their earning capacity increases by getting those skills, even
That's
if it's
right. Okay. That's right. I mean, to Amy's point, I can leave high school and go work for $15 an hour. That seems pretty good. I'll just do that. And of course, we need some of that in our economy, but we know we have a huge skills gap where we need people saying, yes, I could make $15 an hour right now, but I could double that in the future if I am able to get this degree and fit into the economy in a different way. And if I'm at a community college, I can do both, right? I can work that $15 an hour job full time and go back to school. That's the kind of student we serve. And I think that's what's needed.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and I wanted to ask you both. So recently I met with the Kirkwood Community College Administration, and they were sharing with me kind of a newer open lab concept that they're trying, and that's sort of paired with a competency based deal. So yeah, maybe talk a little bit about what that looks like and why it might be, if you know, or like why it might be beneficial for some students.
I get really excited about this.
I do too. I think it's the future.
I think it's the future.
Yeah,
we have a couple of community colleges doing a lot of experimenting with competency-based programs. And really what that means, just in simple terms, is instead of saying you have to do a certain number of hours, it's saying when you can demonstrate you've learned this thing, you can move on. And so it really allows colleges to serve people in lots of different ways at different paces. If I've already been working and I already understand this concept, or I'm just, an exceptional learner, I can fly through it and focus on the thing where I need the most support. And if I'm a student who needs a little bit of extra time, that's not penalized, right? So I think it's just so exciting to think about these different conceptions of how we know when someone has gotten the education or skills that they need, and thinking about that in a very different way.
Right. I mean, it seems so much more effective than allowing a student to get like a bunch of C's on a test or something and then get their, degree, instead of really having to sort of master a skill before you can move on to a higher skill.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And the way I understand that it works at Kirkwood, or what they're trying, is like even allowing like a lab space to be open sort of at all hours. So not just during like the 10:30 to 11:30 class,
Mm-hmm.
but they can come in like a non-traditional student who has children or something can come in when it's convenient to sort of practice a skill. Am I understanding that right?
Yes, and another great example of that is Hawkeye Community College's Automation and Robotics Center. That is exactly what that offers. Is they have the equipment you can practice on, they have robotics, they have a number of different things, and you can come if you want to learn the skill and get done and on to the next thing. You can come hang out there 24/7 and work on it if you want to. And it's really just allowing that flexibility for different learners to do what works for them.
Yeah.
UMac is having a lot of success with this model as well with their advanced manufacturing. We were talking about that earlier, being a high need. Their program was low in enrollments until they switched to this model. And it just works so much better for students and for employers, because they can send a student when it works for them. Because we're trying to do more earn and learn models where students are actually getting upskilled on the job. So they're earning money while they're getting their skills that they need to advance in a particular role. And then they're seeing much better completion rates, because you just keep going until you master that concept, and then you go on to the next concept. But, in a classroom, you're going to have students at all different levels. So this really customizes it to that individual student and individual employer. So yeah, you can see why we both get excited about this model, because it's showing really positive results. It's labor intensive for the college because it just is so different than what they've done historically. So it really takes a lot of work to get faculty on board, and it really blows up their curriculum and makes them almost rebuild it. But it's good and exciting. We just have to support them with time and resources to do that work. But a number of our colleges have grants to dive into this competency-based education world.
Yeah. And you kind of read my mind, because that's what I was wondering about. It just feels like whenever I hear about all of the different things that community colleges are trying and offering, I just think about the faculty and like what a wide range of faculty you need, and how flexible they have to be. I mean, I guess, can you guys talk a little bit about like because I noticed that in the new report, is that many of the faculty are already, like, whatever the word is, but certified to offer to teach for 4-year degrees. But like what sort of demands are on the faculty in terms of meeting all these needs?
I mean, our community colleges, I think, have just the best faculty around. You're not going to find a more passionate group of people for what they're doing who are so interested in helping students learn and just get really excited about that. We do have a lot of faculty who are already have the credentials or experience to meet the requirements to teach bachelor's degrees. However, they're also mostly teaching at a full load. And so one of the challenges of a bachelor's degree program would be that it's not going to be as simple as adding courses to existing faculty. We will need more faculty. And in the most high demand areas, that's the most challenging. And typically we can't compete salary wise. So if I'm a nurse, I can for sure make more money in nursing than in teaching nursing. And that's true across a lot of different fields. IT and those kinds of things are incredibly challenging. So that's going to be something we have to really figure out and work through with this, because we need more faculty, and where we have faculty shortages are the same places the workforce has shortages.
Yeah, absolutely.
Our colleges are really asked to serve a wide range of community, because they are colleges of the community, and the community has wide-ranging needs. And even just in code, if you look at the mission of a community college, they are doing everything from, diploma equivalency to, and then if you add on bachelor's, that is a wide range of things that the college needs to take on and take responsibility for. So I do feel for the colleges sometimes just how much they have to do, but that is because communities have diverse needs, and they're about serving the needs of the community. And ultimately, like bachelor's degrees for community colleges would still be about workforce need. That's why it would be workforce. So I do feel like while they do a lot of things, it's the meeting the needs of the community, meeting the needs of workforce is a clear through line of everything they do.
Right. And what's really wild, it just jumping off of what you just said, is just how technology is really changing the workforce needs so much.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one thing that I've noticed, across the board at community and university and private college campuses, is that I feel like they're closing majors and opening new majors sort of all the time. Like co-colleges really in Kirkwood are doing a lot of aviation type of degrees, because of the pilot and the maintenance demands in the workforce. Is that something that you're seeing at the community college level too? Like just having to launch new degrees that didn't exist before based on workforce?
Absolutely. We do program approval, so we see all those changes come through our office, and they're constantly changing, which to me is a sign that they're doing their job well, because we ask that they meet with advisory committees of business professionals at least twice a year to get what is the latest trend in this industry, because you really cannot afford to not be on top of that, or you won't be putting out students that meet the needs of employers. So it's really critical that the program portfolio is changing frequently, which is another thing that kind of on faculty and administrators' plates, is to keep up with that. But yes, it's essential that they be in touch with industry needs, talking with them frequently so that their programs are relevant, especially in this climate, like you said, that's changing so rapidly. The equipment needed in our CD programs is changing rapidly. And then even just the skill set as AI comes on board, is here. Yeah.
Yeah, it seems to me just the industry collaboration would be really so important, because with colleges working with companies, for example, to really fine tune what they're needing out of the students, I think sounds important. But how can you talk a little bit about that, how that collaboration has changed, whether the colleges are working more with private companies, even to get them as instructors or whatever? What does that look like right now?
That's the other thing that I think a lot of people don't realize about community college, is just how integrated with the local businesses we really are. Amy mentioned advisory boards. Every single one of our career and technical programs has an advisory board made up of people who work in that industry in that local area. So they're advising what that curriculum looks like, what equipment students are being trained on, how they're being trained. These are the people that are going to hire the graduates. So they're saying, here's what someone I want to hire is going to have to know and do. But in addition to that, we work really closely with businesses on just meeting their training needs. We have a couple of different state programs that support training both new employees and existing employees. And that's really customized training services that the community colleges are providing for those employers. So that's not necessarily, oh, your students are going through this degree program or this certificate program. It's, I need all my employees to learn this new piece of equipment. I need more leadership on my team, that kind of thing. And then we're coming in and using state funds and company funds together to support those training needs for their workforce. And those are really unique programs in the state that have shown a lot of success. So there are a variety of ways that we work with businesses, and it's a pretty robust partnership.
Yeah. And do you sometimes get like people from the companies to come in and instruct a class sometimes, or does that work?
Yeah. It does. And it's something I think we need more of as we look at faculty shortages. Is we're going to have to get real creative about how we find people and, entice people and get those things covered. And then you have things like nursing, where we both need on-campus faculty and clinical faculty who are working with students in their clinical sites. And so those are really robust partnerships with those healthcare facilities as well. And so it's going to take everybody for us to meet our workforce needs in the state. And I think a ton of employers are recognizing that and are coming to the table, but there still needs to be more.
Yeah. And obviously this feels like I feel like the dust really hasn't settled actually, but there is like a pretty big shakeup happening across higher education. And so, I don't know that we kind of know yet, like where things have settled, but I wanted to ask quick, like the why was this COVID? Was it just like the workforce? Was it just is it the enrollment cliff, or like what has caused kind of all of these changes in innovation in degree pathways?
What's interesting to me about it is I think this is how community colleges have always been. I mean, we were an innovative model to begin with nearly 60 years ago. Next year is the 60th anniversary of Iowa's community colleges, and we have kept innovating ever since. I think some of traditional higher education has not operated that way. And in some ways that there have been reasons for that aren't bad. I'm not necessarily being critical, but I think we're now in a place where people's expectations are different. They want to know exactly how what they're learning in college is translating to their life and to their career, and they want that really tightly aligned. And that's just a change, honestly, from how it was originally envisioned for a lot of these institutions.
Yeah, you're right. I honestly have been pretty amazed at how young community colleges are, like in Iowa. Because I'm used to like the 1800s, with like the universities being founded. And so it is amazing to me, that they're only about 60 years old in Iowa. Is that, do you know what it looks like nationally? Is that kind of the same in other states?
Yeah, that's kind of when the community college movement was happening. And it's not that it didn't exist at all before that. We had what were called merged area schools and technical schools, and there were those kinds of things. But this concept of kind of being all these different things to a community was really something that was popping up a lot in the 50s, 60s, and 70s.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, we have community colleges that date back to the 1800s in the state. In terms of their original founding, but as a system, that's 60 years.
Yeah, awesome. Well, and so I wanted to ask, like, what you guys are going to be watching for. Like, what do you like, if you had a crystal ball, what do you think is going to happen? And and like, what are you going to be watching?
There is a lot of change on the horizon. I think we'll see just more alternative pathways, more focus on pathways, more focus on student return on investment, like the value to the student for their investment in the program, connection to workforce. We're trying to incorporate a lot more work-based learning activity into the course. So more of a merging between work and education. So they're not separate enterprises, like you do education and then you go on and you work, but collaborative efforts so that they are experiencing all of that during the program. I think concurrent enrollment will continue to grow. Hopefully we'll just, become more intentional with how students are pursuing those pathways. It'll be very interesting to see what happens with the 3-year bachelor's degrees. Those are the major trends that I imagine. More earn as you learn. So with that collaboration with employers, so apprenticeship degrees, work-based learning, micro credentials that embedded within programs, and then hopefully competency-based. I'm very excited to see where that moves in the next few years.
Yeah, I agree. I feel less equipped to predict the next couple of years because things have been so volatile, but looking longer term, I do think this model where this concept we have in our minds, because it's never really been the reality, but we've had this concept in our minds that college is, you go right after high school, you get something, you're done, you go work for the rest of your life. Now, that is not how it's worked for a lot of people anyway, but I think changing that concept to something where it's going to be much more in and out throughout your life. We're just in a technological era, at the very least, where things are changing so rapidly that getting education and skills at one period of time is not going to be enough. It already isn't enough. And so I think thinking about how education is something where you, get something right after high school, but then you come back and you get a credential that adds on to that, or you continue throughout your life thinking about how to do that better is, I think, where we're headed in the future and what people are really looking for.
Yeah. To me, it feels like it's been somewhat freeing because every student is so different, that if that traditional pathway that everyone sort of assumed isn't a great fit, I think all of the options that exist today it's just kind of nice for people to know that they can chart their own course. Is there something in this or I guess, what are you guys looking for out of this upcoming legislative session specifically? Is there any sort of issues you're looking for people to address?
I mean, our number one priority is always state general aid for our community colleges. That makes up about 30 to 40% of the community college's funding and is an incredibly important resource for keeping tuition affordable, starting new programs, all of those kinds of things. And so we're asking for a $12 million increase in that area, and that's really critical. And I know it's going to be challenging. We are, by all accounts, heading into a difficult budget year. And so I know that's not going to be an easy sell, but it's really important. And I think it's a really good investment.
Right. And in terms of where that money goes, can you does it go primarily to support some of this innovation? And also, sorry, just jumping to the 4-year report, you mentioned, there wasn't a request or sort of a mention of $20 million over 5 years to
That's right.
Support this?
Yeah.
Okay.
So that's really for seed funding. We're not asking for new ongoing funding. We're asking for the increase like usual in our state general aid and for that to take into account this new opportunity. But what other states have found is that you really need funding from somewhere to get new bachelor's degrees off the ground. There are a lot of upfront costs in terms of hiring faculty, developing equipment, developing curriculum and buying equipment and those kinds of things that you need to pay for before the tuition dollars are coming in. And so we're looking for a competitive seed grant funding pool of $20 million over 4 years to support new bachelor's degree program development. So that certainly is also going to be something that's really important. And in terms of where state general aid goes, it is really to our most critical workforce programs. The areas where we have the highest shortages are also the most expensive programs. And so for nursing, again, just to use that as the example, because that is both our biggest program and our biggest workforce need in the state, the tuition we bring in does not cover the costs of that program. And so that's where the state resources to support that are absolutely critical. And I could give a number of other examples. I think that's just an easy one for people to understand.
Yeah. And is that, just to clarify, so if it were like 5 million out of that, is that part of the 12 million ask, or would that be different in terms of if you split up the 20 million over 4 years and that's like 5 million in 1 year, is that
that's a different ask, right? Because that is, the 20 million is one-time funding.
Yeah.
That is just for startup. Our $12 million increase to state general aid is our ongoing resources to meet the needs of all students.
Okay. And does any of that go toward, because I know like if you look at the demographics of Iowa, there are like growing financial aid needs for some students to close some of those gaps. Does any of that go toward like financial aid or scholarship offerings? Okay.
Yep, absolutely. Many of our colleges use state general aid funds to meet the needs of students, and we're really looking at every student's situation and what their needs are, what other programs are available to meet those needs. And if there's still a gap left, they're looking at how they can use other sources of funding to get them there and just to keep it affordable to begin with. And I think that's a big part of that puzzle as well.
Yeah. And I know this is a different topic, a different session entirely, but I thought I'd ask you guys while I have you. Do you know, I know that there were some huge issues with FAFSA a couple years ago. And are those numbers leveling out or coming back up, or where are we? Do you guys know?
I haven't seen where we are. It just opened.
It opened earlier than it's ever opened. So I feel like a lot of the logistical hurdles have been ironed out to some extent. Yeah.
We still have lower FAFSA completion rates in the state than we want. And completing that form is a big indicator that you actually go to college, because a lot of people don't know how much financial aid they would get until they do that process. And so I could be thinking, well, I can't afford to go to college, but then fill out the FAFSA and find out that what I would have to pay or borrow isn't nearly as much as I thought. And so that's why we really push for students to complete that form, even if they're not sure, because that will give them a much better sense of what's going to be on the table for them. And with the college and career transition counselors that Amy mentioned, that's a big push, is trying to get them to do that. So we don't know the numbers for this year yet, but I'm very hopeful. Also hopeful the government shutdown doesn't have an impact on that, because I think that's one of the concerns. They're saying that will still be open and available. But, it's always a concern when you don't have as many staff available for questions or to work through glitches. So hoping we can get that back on track soon.
Yeah.
Our department, the Iowa College Aid Office, has a kind of a whole office that spends a lot of effort and energy on FAFSA completion, because as Emily said, it is a number one indicator on that students actually going on to post-secondary. So we put a lot of energy in there. Some states have mandated FAFSA completion. So it's an interesting policy thing that we've considered as well, is just how do you encourage, do you just put in incentives to encourage student completion of that FAFSA?
Yeah. I know. I really love all of the databases and the way that the Department of Education has created these tools, so you can I find it fascinating to jump from school to school to see what the FAFSA completion rate is. It's in real time. I just am doing a plug for the Department of Education site, but you can go to the new way you guys do the annual community colleges report is so awesome. Because you could just go to joint enrollment and tab down for many years. So anyway, it's super cool. And
we are trying to put more data like that in people's hands so they can make more educated decisions. So I'm very excited to know you found our report.
I know, Amy and I could nerd out for the rest of the day about data. It is something the state does really well. And I don't, not enough people know that. We collect a lot of data about Iowa's community college students and their outcomes. And we really are able to use that to ensure that we're delivering on what they need and having the success we want. And it's really, I just don't think there's anything in the country like it. And it's all available publicly on iowastudentoutcomes.com. And that's just such a unique feature. If you want to go in and look at what your earning potential would be for a specific degree program at a specific college, you can do that. And that's just really great information for people to have.
It is awesome. Like from a reporter's perspective, I am so grateful, and I could spend all day reading it. So anyway, thank you guys for that, and thank you for being here. I think we're out of time, but thanks for everyone for tuning in, and for our panelists. I just want to say quick, I tried to steer clear of this because our last session in the education track for Iowa Ideas is apprenticeships. So anyway, that's conversation comes up at 11:50. So you can tune in for that. It's along the same line of thought, though. So anyway, thank you all again for tuning in. Thanks for our panelists, and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thanks. Yep. Bye.